can begin. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, East Asia After the Pandemic, Green New Deal and Green Recovery. My name is Uiko Hasegawa, Executive Director of the Green New Deal Policy Research Group, which is hosting this webinar. It is my great pleasure to have the opportunity to learn and discuss green policies in East Asia from these wonderful speakers. Today is 10th December and the year 2020 is coming to ending. This year, the world has been hit by pandemic. Recovery from this crisis must be more than just a return to the pre-pandemic era. It must also overcome the two major crises facing the world: inequality, poverty, and climate change. We believe the necessary strategy is a Green New Deal based on anti-austerity economic policies. Our Green New Deal Policy Research Group is a newly formed organization that was launched in July this year. It was set up by a group of researchers, politicians, and members of NGOs to study and promote Green New Deal for post-pandemics. This webinar will be an opportunity for us to continue to collaborate with other countries in East Asia. Now let me introduce our wonderful speakers. Professor Jong, Seoul National University. Hon Sensei.
Hello.
On Korea. And Dr. Lin Chun-Hsu, Chun-Hus Institution for Economic Research on Taiwan.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all.
Thank you. And Associate Professor Sato Kazuaki, Iwate University on China.
Nice to meet you.
And NGO Kiko Network researcher, Mr. Iyoda Masayoshi on Japan.
Hello. It's very nice to meet you all.
Thank you. We are looking forward to your presentation. And I'd like to introduce you the discussant. Professor is Zhou, Major University.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And Dr. Lihchyi, Chun-Hus Institution for Economic Research. And Professor Kajitani Kai, Kobe University.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And Miss Dahlia Amy, a student at Kwansei Gakuin University. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Clemens Kunze of the Heinrich Bell Foundation, who has provided tremendous support for this webinar. Clemens-san, please.
Thank you very much, Uiko-san, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Uiko-san and Professor Park for organizing this webinar. It's really an excellent opportunity for all of us to exchange and learn. My name is Clemens Kunze. I'm the Deputy Director of the Heinrich Böll Foundation's regional office in Hong Kong. Uiko-san has asked me to share a couple of words about our organization, which might help all of you to understand why we're interested in this topic. So the Heinrich Böll Foundation, or Stiftung is the German word for it, is a German political foundation, or if you want, a green think tank that is very close to the green movement in Germany and in Europe for that matter. Our headquarters is in Berlin, and we have, I believe, around 35 offices all around the world now. The office here in Hong Kong is one of our youngest. We just opened last year with the aim to foster exchange between Asia and Europe, but also with the aim to understand the most significant trends with a global impact coming from Asia. And now, as Uiko-san has said already, this year will be remembered as the year of the pandemic, for sure. But it's also a year where significant climate pledges have been made by the EU and Britain, but just recently also China, Korea, and Japan have announced carbon zero pledges, which in many ways are very significant developments, we believe. And together with the stimulus packages that in some countries have been called green stimulus packages or green recovery packages, this can actually have a very important influence on how we deal with the economies and climate in the next couple of years. Now, as the Heinrich Böll Foundation, we understand that, and as Uiko has said, that in addition to climate, there are so many other challenges. A lot of societal challenges, rising inequality, fragmented societies, increasing monopolization of assets, technologies. And if you allow me, like a crisis of a neoliberal globalization model as such. And all of this, in our understanding, calls for a larger socio-ecological transformation. And that is what we're most interested in, to hear and explore ideas on an economic and on a policy level, how we can reach such a transformation, how we can really achieve carbon reduction, and how we can actually reach more just and equal societies. So I think today's webinar is a very, very good opportunity to see where countries in East Asia stand in this regard, to learn from all of you. And I think also in a time where countries and narratives are very much shaped on national lines and national interests and sensitivities, it's a great opportunity to also have this regional exchange here and talk very frankly about what certain countries have achieved, where we can learn from each other, and where we should also keep on discussing with each other much more. So I think I keep it here. I look very much forward to your presentations and for the discussions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Riko-san and Clemens-san. My name is Park Seung-jun, a professor of Kansei Gakuin University, and I'm today's moderator. I'm also a steering committee member of the Green New Deal Policy Study Group. Today, we welcome great presenters to learn and discuss about the green economic and fiscal policies in Korea, Taiwan, China, and Japan. As you have been informed, if you would like to ask a question, please write it to the chat box indicating whom you would like to ask, and then speakers may give answers, answer texts. We are sorry to say we think not all questions can be answered, but all the discussion papers are already available in our website in English and Japanese. All participants, please mute your microphones, but please keep your camera on to show your faces as long as there is no problem in your room concerning the internet connection. Now I would like to begin immediately. Our first presenter is Professor Hong Jong-ho on Korean New Deal. I have had the pleasure of collaborating with Professor Hong several years ago. Now, please, Professor Hong, share your screen and begin your presentation. Give your presentation in 30 minutes.
Thank you, Professor Park. So I will first share my slides. Okay. The title of my presentation is Triple Crisis and Green New Deal of Korea. Well, I had a similar webinar about 2 weeks ago with other Asian countries, including India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Singapore. And you can see that in those, many of those are developing countries, their viewpoint is quite different, at least the government. What they're concerned about is the government of these countries, these developing countries, have tendency to deviate from greenness, deviate from carbon neutrality, deviate from climate change policies, because these countries are really struck by COVID-19, and their economy is in a very serious turmoil. So whether they have enough resources, financial resources, to move toward greenness or carbon reduction policies, these experts in those countries were very concerned about that direction that these developing countries' governments are heading toward. But here, now the participants of right now this webinar is East Asian countries, where there are Taiwan, China, Japan, and Korea. And I think it's very fortunate that, at least for us, we share this viewpoint that to combat COVID-19, it has to go hand in hand with trying to overcome climate crisis as well. The two are not in conflict, but two should go hand in hand. Okay, so my message is in that line. When Korean government announced Green New Deal, this program or policy should tackle climate change, climate crisis, but at the same time, it can be a great channel, an effective channel to overcome the economic crisis as well. It's not easy, but that's the direction that we should be moving toward. Okay, when I say triple crisis, I mean by disease crisis, economic crisis, and climate crisis. I'm sure you all will agree with this idea, because these are all intertwined. They are interconnected, right? The climate crisis is one of the main reasons why the mankind, humankind is suffering from disease crisis, which is COVID-19. We already have experienced SARS and MERS, and these are also the vector-borne diseases and zoonotic diseases as well. So many experts say that when the climate crisis is worsening, we can have more trouble in terms of having these types of vector-borne diseases, such as COVID-19. And because of this disease crisis we are suffering, the whole world is suffering from economic crisis at this moment. So we can see that there is a strong circular relationship between the economy and the environment. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is our economic activity should aim for sustainability. Why? Because our economic activity in the last 200 years or so brought about the climate crisis, because we have been heavily dependent on fossil fuel, right? And because of the usage of fossil fuel, we have been emitting carbon in the last 200 years, which is causing climate change, which is causing disease crisis, which brought about economic crisis. Okay, so these are all related. That's my point. So to overcome this triple crisis, what we should do is we need to have a transformation, fundamental transformation of how we consider our economic activity, right? Our economic activity so far has been very unsustainable. This is a very famous cartoon. I'm sure some of you have seen this already. It was shown in the Weekly Economist. And while the Earth and COVID-19 virus are fighting each other, there is climate change. Heavy boxer is looking from outside in, okay? And they say this is a preliminary round. What I'm trying to say here is this cartoon is from economists. They care about economy, not so much about, maybe not so much about climate, right? And they are concerned that climate change can negatively impact our economic system, right? And they are already realizing that climate change can have a very strong impact on how we have been doing in our economic activities. This picture, there are many ladies and gentlemen here. This is from the local governments, the heads of the local governments in Korea. We have 228 local governments in Korea, and almost all of them have joined together to declare a climate emergency and call for a transition to a sustainable society. Even though there is no specific action plan yet, I think this is a very positive starting point that local governments are already in Korea. They are feeling this pressure that climate crisis is affecting their residents, the people's lives. Okay, I'm sure you know that Korea is a very fast-moving country, a very dynamic country, which is good in a sense, but bad in a sense as well. When there is an issue or a goal or a target, people of Korea can move toward that direction at the same time, but whether they are well prepared for that direction, I'm not sure, okay? So here, I'm trying to share how the Green New Deal of Korea has been developing in the last 5 or 6 months. So on May 20th this year, the President Moon formalized a plan for a Green New Deal. And he said that it is clear that the Green New Deal is the way for us to go. But you know what? Before May 20th, the government, especially the Ministry of Economy and Finance, they have not considered at all a possibility of Green New Deal to combat COVID-19 and the economic crisis. They were only thinking about digital New Deal, so-called digital New Deal. But there's some behind story, but I do not have time for that. Anyway, President Moon heard something, and he thought that the climate crisis is an important issue, a global issue, at the same time, a national issue. So he first proposed, you have to think about Green New Deal. That's what he said to the ministers of these of our government. Since then, everything has changed. It's amazing how fast it changes. On June 14th, the government, especially the Ministry of Economy and Finance, they announced a 5-year Green New Deal plan up to 2025. Okay, and my discussion paper shows their plan, a 5-year plan. So what they are trying to do is they are trying to invest the public investment worth of 114 trillion won, Korean won, which is about 104 billion US dollars. And what's important here is this financial resources is maneuvered to help the country's economy to recover from COVID-19 related recession while creating 1.9 million new jobs. Okay, so this is a plan for both tackling climate crisis and economic crisis. Okay, at least on paper. On July 4th, the third supplementary budget includes Green New Deal. So far in Korea, we have had 4 supplementary budgets, okay? And the government is planning on the 5th one soon, okay? And here, the public investment for the third supplementary budget, it includes 1.3 trillion Korean won, okay? And these money will be geared toward green remodeling, renewable energy financing, and green industry and technology. October 28th, President Moon enters again. He announces commitment to carbon neutrality by 2050. This is a big one. This is a big one. And I know that Prime Minister of Japan and the President of China have said something similar to this, right? And President Moon gave a speech to National Assembly, and that's where he said this. This is because many experts, the civil society have consistently asked for, you announced Green New Deal, but you do not have a specific action plan. Where is the action plan? Many countries are announcing carbon neutrality. So there was pressure from the civil society in Korea. And I'm not sure whether that was the main reason for President Moon to announce this. But anyway, President Moon announced carbon neutrality by 2050. Okay. November 27th, that's about 2 weeks ago, right? President Moon also announced to launch a presidential body, which is called 2050 Carbon Neutrality Committee. Okay, this is a presidential body. So you can see that in 5 months, things are rapidly changing. It's changing so quickly. And he also announced that a vice minister, there will be a new position devoted to energy policy within the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. Okay. December 7th, which is just 3 days ago, the government, mainly the Ministry of Economy and Finance, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy, they announced 2050 carbon neutrality roadmap. Okay, so this is a more updated version of what they announced. They reported in June. Okay, this is updated version of their announcement in June. Okay, so there are three main policy goals: transforming Korea's economic structure to a low carbon economy, creating a low carbon industrial ecosystem led by new technologies, and building a fair society through carbon neutrality. So this third one is similar to what we say just transition, right? You know what just transition is, okay? So that's where we are now. That's where we are now. Do you share this idea this is enough? Do you think this is concrete enough? Do you think there are enough policy measures to attain 2015 carbon neutrality? That's an open question. Okay, that's an open question. Here's the breakdown of what the government has been planning on, announced in June, last June. Okay, there's total investment plan for up to year 2025 That's 160 trillion won. That's about 145 billion US dollars. Okay, and we have Digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and social safety net. So there is a public investment as well as private investment. That's the government's goal, and the job creation numbers. So this is their target. Okay, a total of 100. That's total of 190,000. Is that right? Okay. Yes. So and from the Digital New Deal, the Green New Deal, there are respective numbers for job creation targets. And these are specific policy measures for Green New Deal. We have green remodeling of cities, space, and life. We have low carbon decentralized energy proliferation and building green industry and innovation ecosystem. This is shown in the paper, so the discussion paper, so I'll skip this. I'm not gonna elaborate on that. I think this is an important diagram. It appeared in this year's journal, Nature Sustainability. The title is Beyond the Green Growth. And you can see that there are three visions, which are green growth, Green New Deal, and degrowth. You know what degrowth means. I know that many Europeans especially, they believe that degrowth is a desirable target that humankind should aim for. What's important here is the commonality of these three visions or goals, which are carbon tax, high energy efficiency, and expanding renewable energy. Okay, all these three can be shared and should be shared by green growth, Green New Deal, and degrowth. So the problem in Korea is, even though we have targets, even though we have goals, even though we have the money that the government and the private are trying to spend for Green New Deal and the goal for job creation, what's lacking here in Korea is there are no specific policy measures. What types of policies that they're going to use, the government will use to attain this goal, of 2050 carbon neutrality. So far, there are little talk of carbon tax. Our energy efficiency is quite low compared to other OECD countries. Excuse me. And the renewable energy share in our electricity supply is quite low compared to other OECD countries. So we have Mr. Kunz here, and you're from Europe, right? You're from Germany? Yes, okay. So here, the European Green Deal. The von der Leyen, the president of EC, she said the European Green Deal is their new growth strategy. So it's this is a growth strategy, but at the same time, this is a very ambitious plan to combat climate crisis at the same time. And they make sure that they try to cut carbon emissions while creating jobs. Okay, so I think that's a very important statement, and they show that they contend that economic growth should be decoupled from energy use and pollution. So what they're trying to say here is a sustained economic growth is possible, but at the same time, they can reduce resource use and energy use, okay? So there's the decoupling is what they're trying to aim for. I like that expression, mainstreaming sustainability in all EU policies. So far in Korea, there is struggle. Okay, there is struggle. There is conflict between the old-fashioned economic growth and Green New Deal. Okay, there is conflict among government officials, among politicians, even among people. Okay, but personally myself, I hope in Korea, sustainability, Green New Deal, carbon neutrality become mainstream. Okay, mainstream economic policy, mainstream social policy. Okay, that people in general, people of Korea can agree that this way towards sustainability is where we should go. That's why we have alternative viewpoints in Korea toward Green New Deal. Some people, some experts, and most of civil society, they believe that the emphasis should be on green rather than New Deal. But most of the politicians and many of the government officials, they believe that New Deal, there's emphasis on New Deal, okay? So government spending, creating jobs are much more important than green, okay? So green is just an adjective, just a simple adjective for New Deal, okay? Because right now, Korean economy is suffering from negative growth. So this is where the government should mobilize their resources, everything, to have a fast recovery from COVID-19 economic crisis. Okay, so there's this very different viewpoint in Korea, which is still persisting. Okay, and I believe energy transition is a key component of Green New Deal. I'm sure many of you will agree with that, especially in Korea, this is true, especially in Korea, because we are the 9th largest energy consuming country, and most of our energy, just like Japan, we import our energy, primary energy sources from outside the world of Korea, and our nuclear power plant density is the highest in the world, and the renewable generation is the lowest in OECD countries. Our PM 2.5 concentration level is the highest in OECD countries. So this shows very extreme numbers, very, very extreme numbers, okay? So this is a map of some of the countries. You can see that South Korea is small compared to other countries. These are numbers of nuclear reactors. That's why I said our density is the highest, okay, among all these countries. Russia is 170 times larger than that of South Korea, okay? And they have 36, while in South Korea we have 24 reactors. Japan's size is 4 times larger than South Korea, and in Korean Peninsula 2 times larger Japan. And I know that right now in Japan, not many reactors are running at this moment. Most of the nuclear reactors have stopped. And I said our PM 2.5 concentration level is very high. That red it's higher than Israel, where I've been to Israel and their pollution is really bad. I've been to Jerusalem, I've been to Tel Aviv, and I was surprised to see this number. Korea's PM 2.5 is that concentration is higher than Israel. Here's the share of renewables in electricity generation. The bottom one is Korea. Okay, it's in Korean, but Japan is right above. This is US. That's Japan. Japan is a little over 20%. Okay, Japan. These are Denmark and Austria. Okay, Denmark and Austria. This is Germany. Germany is over 40% in year 2005 projection. this number, and OECD average is little above, is right below 30%. Okay, this is OECD average, right below 30%. Korea, unfortunately, even though this government has been trying hard to expand renewable energy, but year 2019, this is an official number. It just came out. It just came out 3 days ago. We are still at 5.05%. Okay, so among which solar is the highest. Next is hydro, and wind is very low. Wind is less than 10% of this. So we have long ways to go. And as you can see, the worldwide job creation from renewable energy sources is quite high, more than 11 million worldwide. In year 2019, this number became 11.5 million. Okay, and I think this can be a main source of job creation among all industrial sectors. Unfortunately, this is the number for Korea. Our ratio is very low. Renewable energy employment and power capacity is very low as well. Okay, this is my last slide. I'm almost done. I spent 26 minutes. In conclusion, the problem in Korea is this is not just about which way is right or wrong. I think there is conflict of values in Korea in energy transition. There is conflict of values. Korea from 70s to 80s enjoyed the highest annual economic growth rate in the world, almost 10% every year, almost 10% every year. And those who have been the main workforce at that time, my parents' generation, they are still alive. Those in the 70s and 80s, Korea is a very fast moving toward age society, and they are still alive, and they believe the fossil fuel oriented, the nuclear oriented, this type of electric supply is the main source which made Korea's economic miracle possible. Okay, and renewable energy, they do not have much hope, or they do not have much trust in renewable energy, whether this can be a viable source. They do not believe so. I talked to my parents, especially my father. Every time we talk about this, he says, "No, you're wrong, Jong-ho, you're wrong. How can renewable energy? How can wind? How can solar can substitute fossil fuel and nuclear? Okay, that's not right. You should change your mind. You should change your viewpoint." And this type of conflict, this type of struggle is going on right now in Korean society. This is not easy, okay? This is not easy. That's why the younger generation is much more open toward renewable energy, the demand management, distributed generation. But older generation, in general, they do not share this type of idea. So we have long ways to go, because it's very difficult to change values, right? It's very difficult to change values, what they believe in. But because of the triple crisis that Korean economy and Korean society is suffering right now, I believe slowly but consistently we should be moving toward energy transition and Green New Deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Hong. So we advanced to the discussion about 10 minutes. The discussant is Professor SooCheol and Dr. Lihchyi. Please, Professor Lee, begin with your question.
Okay, I'd like to share my the PPT of my questionnaires. Is okay?
Oh, okay.
Is okay? Could you
Hi.
show my slide?
Yeah.
Is okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very interesting and informative presentation. This is my question. I have 3 questions, so you need not to reply all my questions because I think the limitation of times. The first question: President Moon pronounced net zero emission of GH by 2050 in October 2020. And I understand Korean New Deal, Green New Deal, was published in July 2020. And was there any feedback between net zero plan and the Green Deal, or are they totally independent? This is question one. I think it's a simple question. Question 2 is renewable energy target of Korea 20% in 2030 and around 30 and 35% in 2040. In electricity, currently around 8%, I think, is not ambitious considering 2050 net zero. I think the Professor Hong already mentioned about this. I think a more ambitious renewable energy target should be set up in Korea. And how do you think about this? And I think this question is important. I think the Japanese government have a plan to push for nuclear power under the name of net zero. And could you tell me the role of a nuclear power generation in net zero by Korean government? Is second. The final one is Korean Green New Deal showed no roadmap for decarbonization society, as Professor Hong pointed in the paper already distributed, and also showed no effective policy instruments toward not the decarbonized society except financial investment. And also in Green New Deal, Korean Green New Deal, the use terms low carbonized, the low carbon economy, low carbonized investment, something like that. But I think they should be changed to decarbonized. So I think carbon pricing, like carbon tax, is inevitable to get the net zero targets. I know the Korea already introduced the ETS in 2015, but I think this instrument will be very limited and to reduce GHG substantially. So is there any possibility to introduce carbon tax in Korea in near future? And how do you think of introducing carbon tax in Korea? This is all of my questions.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lee. Can you go back to the first slide? Okay,
Please.
Yes. No, yes, thank you. Well, I think I mentioned here and there during my presentation. Oh, please go back to, yes. During my presentation, some of the questions that you asked. Thank you for asking these questions. As I said, there is 3 days ago, the government has announced the roadmap, which is supposed to be a feedback based on the net zero plan, the carbon neutrality plan announced by President Moon. Whether it's specific enough, I don't think so. Okay, but there were some questions during the press conference from the reporters. What do you think about carbon tax? What do you think about removing diesel cars altogether? You know what the minister said? Those are very difficult questions. We we'll be considering those policy measures, but I cannot mention anything specific at this moment. That was his response. Okay, so you can see what's going on in Korean government and Korean society. And for the nuclear, I think this is a very important, critical, and very sensitive question, because in Korea there is almost like a war going on between pro-nuclear and anti-nuclear generation. Okay, very, very severe. Okay, and those pro-nuclear people, they believe that that carbon neutrality cannot be attained without without the support from nuclear generation. Okay, without nuclear generation, the carbon net zero target cannot be attained. While those who are against the nuclear, like myself, the government has already announced that there will be a gradual decrease of nuclear power generation, because there are many old nuclear power plants which will be shut down gradually. And in doing so, extra demand for electricity will be supplied by renewable sources. Okay, that's what the government right now is planning on, and I think that's the right way to go. But at this moment, currently, there is a very strong conflict between the two sides.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we would like to go to Dr. Wen's question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the invitation. It's really nice to meet old friends and new friends on webinars. And as to the Professor Hong's presentation, I enjoyed very much, because it really showed that this year's situation, especially the Korea's President Moon, not just announced the carbon neutrality by 2050, but also formed a presidential committee, also financed not just 139 billion to reach the target. So to us, it's really something telling us the economy in Korea somehow will be changed as well in the next 10 years. And Taiwan, I believe Korea will have a big influence on Taiwan, but just like Professor Hong, you mentioned about this is really not easy to transform the electricity structure, especially the energy structure in Korea. In Taiwan, we have the same situation. We have only 4.8% of renewable energy right now, and try to reach 20% of renewable energy in 2025. And it's really struggling so hard. So the first question that I have is that you already sent out this message that Korea has the Green New Deal. And this new plan, will that affect the current target of a renewable energy structure? Like you have the 20% by 2030. So will you try to increase the target European countries to 50 something by 2030? That's the first question. And the second question is that since it's really not easy to transform the whole economic structure, so I would like to ask, you mentioned about the 139 billion US dollars to finance the whole program. And on your paper, the table one, the table one shows that there are 33% of the public and the private investment to go to the green finance. That's I would like to know what's the rest, the 27% of the investment will come from what source? What kind of finance source you will have to invest on the Green Deal. And another thing related to green finance is that European countries have a new regulation called taxonomy, which is try to set out the environmental standards on economic activities. I would like to know is that Korea has the same program to announce soon, or Korea is thinking to do this kind of a plan in the future? Thank
Okay,
you. That will be my questions.
Hon Sensei, can you answer in 2 minutes?
Yes, I think
Okay.
my time has run out, but those are very
Yes.
important and critical questions. Thank you, Professor Wen. So if I were a government official, I would surely upgrade the 30-20 goal, because without upgrading that, the 2050 carbon neutrality cannot be attained, right? So right now we are sitting at 5.05%, and in 10 years that will go up to 20%. I think still that's very low. So the OECD countries, that level is already almost 30%. And for taxonomy, the government has been realizing that, because right now, I'm sure other countries are suffering from that issue as well, but we are suffering from very heavy budget deficit, right? Because now already we have spent much financial resources. We have borrowed it, and we have to pay back all those money. That's why there are talks about carbon tax. Professor Lee talked about already, but right now the government is rather reluctant, because they know that what kind of short-term impact that will have on Korean economy. But I believe that we should find some extra tax sources so that our finance, our public finance, the budget can be in a more stable level than what's been going on lately, especially in year 2020. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hon Sensei, Lee Sensei, Wan Sensei. Then let's go straight to Lin Sensei's presentation. Please share your screen.
Okay.
And please start. Thank you.
Okay, you can see the screen all right? Yes, okay. Okay, thank you again for inviting me to this webinar. It's really my pleasure to meet all friends and new friends on this platform. And actually, it's, to me, very good opportunity to exchange some opinions with all distinguished scholars in Asia. But also, I'm a little bit embarrassed to talk about this issue, especially for COVID-19, because in Taiwan, the government hasn't talked about anything about post-COVID-19 yet. And so I just like to maybe introduce you some schemes, some financial programs right now we have, we continuously have, and to sustainability in Taiwan. Okay, first of all, I would still like to introduce my organization a little bit. Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research is a leading think tank in Taiwan for economic development policies since 1981. And my division is called Center for Green Economy. It's established in 2013, the youngest division in CIER. Right now, it's led by Dr. Wen. She is the director of our center, and we have about 30 people working in this center. In CIER, totally, we have 400 employees working for all kinds of policies. And my center is more focused on climate change, circular economy, recycling, trade, finance, etc. Okay, so some background and issues I would like to start my presentation. In last April, it's very interesting to me to see a lot of media, international media, post many news about how the environment turn green or turn clear, turn more, turn better, okay? And especially like India, like in North India, people in a small village can see the Himalaya mountains that has been disappeared for a few decades. So the air is cleaner and the water around Venice is clear also. In 2019, it's looked like very polluted. This year, it's very clear. Now everything turns to better. The animals coming out to the parking lot in Yosemite in California. Okay, so all this are telling us the environment has a relief, has a break because of the outbreak of COVID-19, or what? Or what should we do in the future? Okay, so in the past very frustrating years, first I think this news come in as the most exciting news to me in the past year. Okay, that's the EU budget for recovery plan. And 1/3 of the recovery plan will go to tackle the climate change issues. Okay, so that's a very big encouragement to me because everyone is talking about pandemic, how we can survive in this virus situation, etc. And Europe just give us a very good example how we should do in the long run. Okay, and China, Japan, Korea, all claim they will going carbon neutral by 2060, 2050, etc. So how about Taiwan? So that's something I feel not so comfortable to talk about because we are very quiet at this moment, and I hope we can do something more, especially if we have just learned from Professor Hong. Korea has so many programs in the past several months, and we really like Taiwan to have that kind of programs also. Okay, here are some status about Taiwan green policies. Right now, we don't have a very comprehensive green policy such as Green Deal or green growth, etc. And not mentioning, we don't have anything for post-COVID period. Okay, for green growth, green economy, etc. But several years ago, the government just proposed a 50% reduction in carbon emission by 2050. Okay, that's some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago already. And I think just 2 days ago, German Watch released a CCPI, Climate Change Performance Index. I think that just came in time, very good timing. Because this year, Taiwan are still doing very bad. Okay, we are ranked number 57 out of 61 countries around the world. And although it's better than last year we were at the 59th. Okay, so this year, I think every time when the news like this released in the society, there will be a lot of discussion how Taiwan should be doing better and what we should do, what we should have. Do we need to claim we are also going carbon neutral, something like that? Okay, so I hope the government will think about that more seriously. Right now, the government is still very happy about the economic growth in this year. We have about 2% growth this year, and they are kind of happy about that and not thinking about how we should do for the stimulus plan, etc., for the environment. Okay, but we do not have a comprehensive framework for green policy, and we have some programs I would like to mention that should be outlining the structure of Taiwan in terms of green finance, green financial schemes. Okay, and the first one is the environmental taxation. That has the longest history in Taiwan. And the second aspect I want to talk about is the renewable energy development through FIT. And the third one is green finance. And this one is very tricky in Taiwan. I think because the first two programs of these three are more related to government involvement. And government put a lot of money or try to get some money for the environment or for green energy. But for green finance, okay, Taiwan government at this moment doesn't have too much money, and so they want to use the private sector, the investment from private sector. So there are some programs coming out very soon. Okay, for environmental taxation, here are 5 more representative programs in the past 30-something years. Okay, the first one is air pollution abatement fee, launched in 1995. And the second one is post-consumer recycling fee since 1998. And third one is soil and groundwater remediation fee, launched in 2001, and water pollution abatement fee in 2015. And last one is the energy tax. Energy tax has been discussed for quite a long time. It's similar to carbon tax, but it only discussed before 2008, because at that time, the president, Ma, the previous president, was campaigning for the presidency, and he proposed this kind of scheme to create double dividends. But it was not successful. Okay, so all of these schemes are based on polluter pays. So they are charged on producers usually, okay, and with as an environmental levy, okay, in Taiwan, the legal status of environmental levy. And here is a comparison of 4 of the 4 schemes, okay. And for example, the air pollution abatement is charged on emitters of air pollutants, okay, or retailers, importers of mobile emitters like cars, vehicles, etc. And the first one is stationary emitters like the factories or construction sites, etc. Okay, based on the pollution, the pollutant emission, pollutant volume. Okay, and the recycling fees are charged on producers or importers based on the sales volume and the imported volume. Okay, and the soil and water groundwater remediation fee are also charged on producers or importers for the sales amount of chemicals, okay, or fossil fuels, etc. And last one, the water abatement fee you charge on households and also charge on factories, etc. Okay, and also based on the water released to the open bodies. Okay, these are 4 major environmental taxes in Taiwan, and we think only recycling fees are more related to the performance of environmental, environmental performance, because it's very clear what the money should be going. It's going to subsidize the recycling processes. And for other 3 are only for pollution control, but there is no direct influence or direct direction for this money, where they should go. Okay, so the performance or the effectiveness of these other 3 are not so obvious. No, that's from our point of view. Okay, for renewable energy, 2025 is a very key year to Taiwan, because the government announced several very important policies or goals for 2025, and we are waiting and to see what will be happening in 2025. The first one is nuclear. Okay, nuclear free. Taiwan will become a nuclear free country by 2025. And the second goal is 20% of the power generation should be from renewable energy. Okay, that's a very ambitious tool. Dr. Wen just mentioned we now have 4.8%. And how we can do this? We can achieve 20% in a few years. That's a question, and everyone is wondering how we can do this. Okay, and the third is not for 2025, but it just really immediately it will be requiring all big electricity consumers to buy or to produce 10% or power they need from renewable energy. Okay, so a lot of consumers, like the big factories, big companies, they will be regulated by this law very soon. And they can do a few things. The first one is they can install renewable energy facilities at their sites. Okay, the second option is they can buy green electricity certificates. And the third one is they can install energy storage with the capacity of their 10% power for 2 hours. Okay, or they just, if they cannot do any one of these three options, they can just pay some money to the government. Okay, so we are also waiting to see what will happen in the next few years. Okay, this is a diagram about renewable energy. And I think the center of this diagram is a renewable energy development fund. Okay, it's collected from fossil fuel electricity and generators, and it's used to do promotion, research and development, auditing, demonstration sites, etc. And also it's used to subsidize the Thai Power Company, the state-owned company who is in charge of everything in electricity, and they will buy the electricity from renewable energy power generators. And okay, so but consumers are here, and what can they do? They can just pay the money to the Thai Power Company. Okay, but right now we are wondering if the electricity bill will go up, but in fact it's not going up because there is a government overseeing or controlling the price of electricity. So right now the electricity price still remaining very low in Taiwan. Okay, so and also the government decide the FIT rates for renewable energy. All right, that's a scheme for renewable energy. Okay. All right, so this is a planned renewable energy power generation by 2025. And you can see a lot of options, and obviously you can see two most important options. The first one is solar photovoltaic, and the second one is wind, especially from offshore wind. Okay, right now we have a lot of projects going on for offshore wind, especially since 2019, early 2019. And in the future, I think you will see a lot of wind turbines if you come to Taiwan for a visit. All right, then back to solar. And solar, there are a few types of solar facilities. And as you already seen, a lot of facilities like this one, ground mounted, okay, it's on the ground, and all rooftops on buildings or on parking lots, etc. And this one is floating, it's on reservoir, on lake, etc. Okay, but because of land availability right now in Taiwan, okay, not just right now, it's always a problem. So the government trying to encourage the installation of solar facilities on agricultural land, okay, like this one on the right hand side, and or on some fishing fish farming practices. So these kind of schemes are very encouraged right now, but we encounter a lot of problem and resistance from farmers, from environmentalists, etc. Okay, and you can see from this diagram, the ground-mounted solar facilities right now is only so probably only 20% of the total capacity, and others are all on the rooftops or on facilities or agriculture, etc. Okay, so that's the situation in Taiwan, and this is a diagram to show you of shore wind turbines where they are. It's all usually it's on the west side of Taiwan. Okay, on the west side is the Taiwan Strait, and so about 100, 200 kilometers away from China, the seashore of China. Okay, so here in the future, if you have a chance to visit, I will try to take you there to see how it is going. All right, the last one, it's about green finance. Dr. Wen also mentioned something about this. And I think why we have this kind of thinking is about, I think totally about the financial situation in Taiwan, the government financial situation in Taiwan is not as good as 30, 20 years ago. Okay, so the power from private company, private sectors is more valuable right now. And the government trying to introduce the private capitals into sustainable business. Okay, so in August, there is an announcement about sustainable development roadmap for corporate governance. Okay, that's called corporate governance 3.0, and that's trying to regulate Taiwanese companies to establish a competent ESG ecosystem in Taiwan. And I think another very important scheme or program that will be launched next year is the government trying to establish the sustainable financial guidance, very similar to the European Union's taxonomy to identify the sustainable industries, etc. For investors, for insurance companies, etc. And they can do responsible finance to them. Okay, so the identification is very important. So here come to my conclusions. Okay, the first one is about environmental taxation. All right, we have quite a few environmental taxes, and that all have long history in Taiwan. But only the post-consumer recycle fee is more correlated to environmental performance because of very close monitoring and very precise statistics. So you can see what's going on with the money they collected from producers and importers. And for other schemes, it's not so obvious. Okay, so that's something we're trying to figure out what will be better for next decades. And the second one is renewable energy. As I just mentioned, we are trying to reach 20% of renewable energy by 2025, but we still have a long way to go. And although the government right now is very aggressive to implement a lot of schemes and to encouragement and to help the goal to be achieved, but I think there are still a lot of barriers and or obstacles like the legal issues, the land availability, and the administration cooperation, and also the livelihood of farmers and those agricultural practitioners. All right, and the third one is a sustainable finance guidance to introduce private capital into renewable energy or to environmental protection facility, etc. And I think they just started, and we probably can have better conclusion in the future. And last one is something we want the Taiwanese government to have, is a comprehensive framework or regulations for sustainability. And no matter it's in the name of Green Deal, green growth, green economy, and especially in the program or this framework, two important aspects should be more focused, emphasized. Okay, the first one is financial scheme. How we can get money, where the money is from, and how we can use the money more smartly, wisely. And also the second one is the regulation. And the regulation in Taiwan play a very important role because the monetary schemes usually is not working very well. But the regulatory enforcement can help the environment better, much better in this country. Okay, I think that's my presentation, and I thank you for your listening. And all questions are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lin Sensei, for your very, very informative presentation. Then now we'd like to move on to the question and answer. The discussants are Professor SooCheol again and Associate Professor Kazuaki Sato. Then Lin Sensei, are you all right? Yeah, please. Please off the mute. Please use your microphone, Lee Sensei.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Lin. Also a very interesting and informative presentation also. And so I have also prepared 3 questions and slideshow. Okay. The first question, or the very overall question, Taiwan has the NDC for Paris Agreement, but as you know, Japan, and Korea, and China recently announced net zero emission. And how do you think about the possibility of also net zero emission amount, net zero announcement in Taiwan also? And then I think East Asia could be more cooperative toward the decarbonization society. This is my first question. The second is a little long, but I'm very interested in this question personally. Taiwan's renewable power generation target of 20%, and it will not be conservative considering Japanese target around 22 and 24 in 2030. But I think Taiwan should have more ambitious long-term target for the universe. And there is a resistance on current FIT system in Japan because of national burden of renewable charge paid by electricity bill. The Japanese FIT is supported by electricity bill, and around 767 yen per month in average household. So I also pay around 600, 800 additionally yen additional to buy my electricity bill. The total amount is 3.6 trillion yen in 2019 in Japan. But I think we have to support renewable energy. The renewable energy deserves more than this, I think, personally. And it is very interesting to me that the renewable support is from Renewable Energy Development Fund. I thought this term is similar to the waste recycle fund of Taiwan, but a frontier system in Asia, and not electricity bill directly. Do you tell me this fund is also in transfer to the electricity bill or not? And is there any strong resistance for the support to the renewable power generation also in Taiwan? If any, how Taiwan government handle this problem? This is my second. And finally, you said one of the reasons of policy failure not to introduce real energy tax like carbon tax, I think, is that cap control policy is more obvious environmental effect and is more in line with development of the environment and the economic benefits in your paper. And it is difficult for me to understand this. But anyway, could you tell me the possibility of introducing effective carbon pricing? Of course, Taiwan has many kind of environmental tax or charges, but not any effective carbon pricing, I think. I heard that Taiwan government challenged, but in phase. So I think these kind of carbon prices will be inevitable toward the decarbonization society, I think. That's all.
Thank you so much, Yi Sensei. Yeah, I think I will just try to answer as much as I can. And probably Dr. Wen can say something also. Okay, so the first one is the possibility of carbon neutral announced by Taiwan. I think, well, Taiwan is always very slow in this campaign. Okay, but right now, I think China, Japan, Korea gave a lot of pressure on Taiwanese government. Okay, especially the German Watch statistic. Taiwan is ranked very far behind many countries, and I think the Taiwan can, I think possible. That's very possible, but I'm not sure when and how soon they will announce something in the future. And for the electricity bill transfer, the burden. Okay, I think Taiwanese government is still keep the price of electricity very low by many instruments. Okay, subsidize the fossil fuel in some way. Okay, and so anyway, I think it's not right now. The people don't feel so much a burden on electricity yet, but as you mentioned, the Renewable Energy Demand Fund is also used to subsidize the electricity, okay, to buy the renewable energy, but this kind of scheme will be stopped from next month. Okay, the money cannot be used to subsidize the electricity price, but it's only can be used for other purposes. Okay, from next year, and I think that will have some influence in next year or the year to come, and maybe in the future the people will start to complain about the electricity bill. And about the pricing, yes, Taiwan carbon pricing. Taiwan trying to establish ETS in this society, but again they are very slow. This issue has been discussed and the law has been passed about 15 years ago. But right now, we still don't have that kind of scheme yet or very concrete operation in the future. So I think that's possible, but we don't know, again, when and when the government will wake up and to do this very soon. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Then Sato-san, are you ready?
Yes,
Yeah,
I don't
please.
have. Okay, I don't have a slide. I have two questions. Thank you, Lin Laoshi. One question is FIT to be paid by fossil fuel power generation companies. It is very near scheme to environment tax. It's only the fossil fuel power generation company paid for the FIT. And the next, what will the environmental tax revenue to be used for? In Japan, Japanese environmental tax only used for the environmental issues. But in the discussion of the Green New Deal, for example, care industry as like child care and disabilities cares or the elderly care, a lot of cares are need to the revenue. But in Japan, only the environmental issue to be used to the revenue. How about the Taiwan's discussion? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sato-san. Okay, for the first question, I think the renewable energy right now in Taiwan is still at a very low percentage. So the fossil fuel companies, or they can provide some assistance to this scheme. At this moment, that's no problem. But as the percentage coming up, I think that there will be another alternative or other options or will be coming out, I guess. Okay, because the burden will be higher and higher. And for the second question about revenue of environmental tax, in Taiwan, we still call it environmental fee more, okay? So the fee is used only for environmental purpose only. It cannot be used for other purposes, like a social affairs, something like that. And so like the air pollution abatement fee, it's can be used to help the air quality. But this kind of definition is very unclear, very confusing. Okay, so the money right now it can be used for a park, okay, to help a park to plant more trees, okay, because there are some good benefits from tree planting, okay, for air quality. But the effectiveness is not so clear. That's why we don't like this too much. And so why I just mentioned about recycling fee, because recycling fee can be only used for recycling purposes. And that's very directly related to the environmental performance. Okay, so to your question, yes, the revenue of environmental tax is only for environmental purposes, but still the correlation is not so clear for most of them. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, so far, two presentations and Q&As are already finished. So, although it is somewhat early, we would like to have a 10 minutes break here. All participants, including speakers and discussants, please turn off your cameras. And if you have time, speakers and discussants, please look at the questions in the chat box and please answer it, or please give another questions. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, all come back. Now I would like to resume. Okay, next presenter. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Next presenter is Kazuaki Sato-san. Okay, then please share the screen and start your presentation. Thank you.
This is very honor to have for this webinar. The global economy has entered a new phase in 2020, directly triggered by the outbreak of COVID-19. Countries around the world are in lockdown to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic damage is immeasurable. In the midst of the COVID-19 recession, governments are being asked to maintain employment and industries. In the US and Europe, the Green New Deal (GND) policy is attracting increasing attention. And in South Korea, as you know, the government's GND policy has been just announced recently. The economic shock caused by COVID-19 is not the only reason why GND is attracting attention. Humanity is being asked to deal with environmental issues such as fossil fuel depletion and climate change. Even without lockdown, fossil fuel-free world is necessary. My report describes how GND has been advanced in China. It's not the future GND, but the GND for so far. China, still experiencing remarkable economic growth, has had an economic policy that followed the GND principle since the 1990s. Of course, in terms of the environmental level and the level of economic development, China has not yet reached the level of developed countries. However, the fact that China has achieved economic growth at the same time as improving the environment is noteworthy in a time when addressing environmental issues has become essential. After the developing countries achieved economic growth with increasing pollution, they proceed with environmental policies. It can be said that they proceed to green their economies after the economic margin were created. This is called the environment Kuznets curve, adapted from the economist Kuznets' idea. According to the environment Kuznets curve, increased economic development is expected to degrade the environment at one point. But as the economic develops further, the environment is expected to gradually improve. But China has tried to do that at the same time. And it has been successful to some extent. This usually called decoupling. Why focus on the GND in China? First, because of potential to create new jobs in the current situation of repeated lockdowns. Even if the development of the vaccines is successful, there is a need to secure the jobs that will be lost due to the computerization of the economy and the use of AI. Putting it another way, the social surplus generated by the development of computer technology needs to be distributed fairly. The social surplus needs to be distributed in an environmentally compatible way, or distributed in a way that not only reduces poverty, but feeds the cultures and arts. Second, it is important for China to advance to environmental policy because it has the largest population in the world, a vast area of land, and strong political power internationally. If China does not succeed in environmental policy, global environmental problems cannot be solved. China's environmental improvement is essential to improve the environment at the global level. Moreover, China is a powerful international actor. China has the potential not only to advance the DND, but also lead to world's environmental policy, just as the EU has done so far. Third, we have a lot to learn from China's GND methods, such as translation to low carbon society, effective use of renewable resources, promotion of renewable energy, elimination of fossil fuels, protection of nature, and the prevention of pollution. These are not environmental problems that confront specific countries, but rather problems that are universally faced by the entire human race. Certainly developed countries have responded to these environmental problems. Environmental policies in Europe are the most advanced in the world. However, countries with less developed economies cannot take the environmental policies of developed countries as a guide. We have a lot to learn from China, which has made environmental measure a driving force for economic growth while promoting the decoupling of the environment and the economy. Developed countries should learn from it. Developing countries should learn even more. Professor An Gang-hu, who influenced on the push China for the GND, said that the China GND didn't really take off until the global financial recessions in 2008. But even before that, China had been promoting decoupling of economic growth and environmental pollution. Decoupling means that pollution does not increase as the economy grows. Job creation by promoting environmental policies is also important. In China, there is a policy of afforestation, which means improving and rebuilding ecosystems that have been degraded. The policy could create significant employment. Since the reform and open up Ganger Kaifan policy, China has adopted the mechanisms of market and capitalist economy. On the other hand, it has also emphasized economic planning. Professor Fu argues that what is needed for the GND is not an economic policy utilizing the invisible hand of God, but an economic plan by the visible hand of mankind. A market economy is necessary, but it is also necessary for the GND to be guided by the government. First, let's review the philosophy of China's GND from Professor Hu's discussion. China has gradually embraced the market economy through the reform and open up policy in 1978. The reform and open up has resulted in rapid economic growth. However, the emphasis on the economy was neglected ecology. Energy consumption has skyrocketed and the pollution has increased. In addition, the waste of natural resources has degraded China's natural environment, which is vulnerable. Professor Fu has harshly criticized this, calling it ecological deficit. He has also examined the greening of the Chinese economy. First, he said that the increase in energy consumption requires improvement in energy efficiency. Second, to address the increase in greenhouse gas emissions, the low carbonization of the economy was considered. Third, in response to the rapid increase in pollution emissions, decoupling of pollution and economic growth was explored. Fourth, in response to the destruction of ecosystems, the regeneration of ecosystems was promoted. Energy, carbon dioxide, pollution, and ecosystems are key concepts of China's GND. Professor Fu said that economic planning should be used to shift China's economic growth model from black development to green development. Black development is economic growth with increased energy consumption, increased greenhouse gas emission, increased pollution, and ecological destruction. He says that the term sustainable development implies an opposing view of the environment and the economy. This reminds us of the environmental Kuznets curve. You have to deal with environmental degradation after the fact. It's a vicious cycle. In contrast, green development is a different idea, Professor Fu says. It is a thorough decoupling of environmental indicators and environmental growth. Next, look at the current GND status in China. This figure you see now shows China's GDP and coal consumption. As mentioned earlier, the decoupling of fossil fuel from the economy and the GND in China is very important, both in terms of energy consumption and in terms of pollution. The decoupling from coal is particularly important. Figure shows that economic growth and coal consumption were linked until 1995. It can be said that Chinese economy was black in this period. However, the relationship between economic growth and coal consumption did indeed disappear between 1995 and 2002. It looks as if green development has been achieved. However, since 2002, the period rapid economic growth has been accompanied by an increase in coal consumption again. This is a recoupling of economic and environment. After the introduction of the FIT in 2013, the decoupling of economy and coal appears to be complete. Coal consumption is no longer increasing. Next, let's look at China's ecological environment. As shown in the figure, which shows China's forest area and forest coverage by province. Emphasis is placed on improving the ecological environment to the GND in China. It can be seen that the forest area has increased by 125 million hectares in the last 30 years. This is 4 times the area of Japan. Forest coverage by province is increasing overall. However, due to the vastly different climate in China, there is no significant change between the top and bottom provinces in forest coverage. A significant increase in forest coverage can be observed in the medium-level provinces. In China, afforestation is practiced in wastelands. Sand breaks and wind breaks are especially important in the vicinity of desert area. The following figure shows investments to prevent pollution in China. Compared to developed countries, China's water, soil, and air pollution level still have room for improvement. However, we have seen a sharp increase in the amount of investment in pollution control. As a percentage of GDP, there was a relatively high level of investment between 1997 to 2006, more than 0.2% of GDP. Since then, investment has increased in line while economic growth, but the trend has begun to increase further, especially after the global financial crisis. Various indicators are emphasized in Chinese GND. Not all the indicators can be found here. For GND to be New Deal, it is necessary to analyze the impact it has on employment. As we can see, the environment and economic decoupling, improvement of the ecological environment, and increase in investment towards green development. This is because it must lead to economic growth and fair jobs growth. Therefore, I would like to introduce the latest researches on the GND in China. A 2019 study by He et al. Empirically analyzes the impact of renewable energy investment on employment. They conducted their analysis using panel data of 141 renewable energy companies listed in China from 2005 to 2016. According to their study, a 1% increase in renewable energy investment would raise 0.031% of the nation's employment volume. However, the impact on overall employment is offset by the fact that investment in renewable energy lowers employment in existing industries, such as fossil fuel, at almost the same level. Technology development has a negative impact on employment in the long run. Increased efficiency means lost job. Therefore, they conclude that the shift to renewable energy has the effect of reducing employment. However, they also point out that the impact varies greatly depending on the type of renewable energy. They say geothermal or biomass, solar, wind, and hydroelectric power have the greatest impact on increasing employment in that order. They point out that a shift to renewable energy with policies focused on geothermal and biomass may not result in job losses. For example, a 2019 study on biomass energy used by Zhang et al. They estimate the potential amount of woody biomass energy. They estimate that potential has increased from 780 million tons of coal equivalents to 1.1 billion TCE over the 20-year period from 1993 to 2013. In terms of promoting the use of biomass energy, it is clear that it has high potential for employment. And even if focusing only on woody biomass, the potential for energy use is more than 5 times greater. And the GND, not only investment in renewable energy, but also overall environmental investment is important. A 1% increase in conservation investment is expected to increase employment by around 0.03%, according to a 2020 study by Su et al. The impact on GDP is estimated to be negative in short run, but positive in the long run. And there is no statistically significant effect of environment investment on average wages. Environmental investment is not the only element of Green New Deal. Environmental regulations are also important. So we need to analyze the impact of environmental regulations on employment. Sun et al. A 2020 study analyzes the impact of environmental regulations on employment between 2006 and 2016 in a spatial econometric model with provincial panel data. They conclude that environmental regulation has a double dividend: environmental improvement and job creation. Local environmental regulation has a positive impact on employment through the direct cost of environmental measure, substitution effects, and technological innovation. Moreover, they point out that stricter environmental regulations in one area have a positive spillover effect on neighboring municipalities. Here are our two studies. Our 2015 research was an input-output analysis on the subsidies for appliance recycling. China subsidizes subsidizes appliance recycling in order to promote the recycling of home appliance. To finance this, a levy is imposed on newly sold appliances. By guaranteeing profits in the green industry, a Chinese government is encouraging private environmental investment. This is different from the mere subsidy policy for capital investment in the green industry, which can be viewed as a subsidy policy for the flow of production activities. Similar scheme is being used for the spread of renewable energy. In China, a feed-in tariff FIT for renewable energy was introduced in 2013. It provides a subsidy to promote renewable energy investment by adding a levy to electricity price and using a levy as a source of funding. However, according to Xu et al. Study, including mine, subsidies are not the key to the spread of renewable energy in China. Subsidies account for a small percentage of the purchase price of renewable energy. The majority of the costs are paid for by the power companies. Regardless whether the cost is covered by subsidies or fees, it is ultimately paid by the end consumer of electricity. A characteristic of China's renewable energy policy is the setting of these electricity prices. China's electricity prices are set at different levels in different provinces. The provinces with a strong economy have high electricity prices, while the provinces with a weak economy have low electricity prices. A huge amount of electricity prices paid by the province with strong economy are used to purchase renewable energy. Therefore, it can be said that the driving force behind China's renewable energy policy is discriminatory electricity prices by region. Finally, I'd like to summarize the further possibilities and lessons for China's D&D. The Chinese experience can be summarized in 3 points. First, it's about jobs. The green industry creates jobs, but at the same time, the development of the green industry means the decline of the black industry. A shift from polluting industries to clean industries is desirable for environmental policy. However, it has been found that it is not enough to increase employment, increase average wages, and reduce income inequality. We need to create quality jobs. Afforestation is going on in China. We have found that it is highly effective in creating jobs in the area of biomass energy use. We believe that we need to promote green but labor-intensive industries that are not as economically efficient as they may seem at first glance. Secondly, it is a way to invest in the environment. When we think of the New Deal, we tend to focus on government investment. However, China's G&D, public investment by the government is not centered to it. Rather, it is important to ensure that the private sector benefit from green investment and remove long-term uncertainty. Policy tools include regulations and schemes that combine levies and subsidies. Although we could not mention in today's report, the key to financing is to support public and private financing through the financial sector and local financing platform. Third, a fair burden. A crucial difference between China's FIT and other countries' scheme is the use of regional differential pricing. Regional differential pricing and the spread of renewable energy allows for redistribution among regions. Industry, we can appreciate that this also contributes to income redistribution, as the higher income group bear more of the burden. China's electricity prices are like a progressive income tax system. Income redistributive financing can ensure more financial resources. The rapid development of GND in China can be attributed to the income redistribution policy with strong financing power. The GND in China is instructive for post-corona economic policy. COVID-19 will force a shift in the traditional mass consumption society. There is a growing need to create good quality jobs en masse. With the need for fair job creation, it is critical that policy scheme and the vision in industry policy directs public and private investment to green industries. The outlook is uncertain. Will the pandemic continue, or will a vaccine be developed and the pandemic cease to occur? However, we need to discuss the kind of economic policies that can be used in any scenario. Let us begin the discussion on the future of the Green New Deal. This is the end of my report. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sato-san. So let's begin the Q&A. The discussant for Sato-san is Professor Kajitani and Dr. Wen. So please, Kajitani-san, please begin.
Okay, let's start. So thank you very much, Professor Sato, for your very informative, so interesting presentation. So time is quite limited, so I prepare the slide. So using this, so I have two questions. First question is about the nuclear policy in the China. In Professor Sato's presentations, emphasis is on the increasing renewable energy in China. In this, growth of using renewable energy in China is quite very drastic. However, the Chinese government also tries to promote nuclear energy as a clean energy. For example, Hainan Island, very famous resort island, where nuclear energy already provides 1/3 of the all electricity supplied. This island has been called a clean energy island also. So I wonder, it is so appropriate for us to evaluate China's Green New Deal for only the promotion of the renewable energy. So how should we think the nuclear policy in China? This is first question. The second question is about the relationship between fees in tariff and inter-regional distributions. So Professor Sato pointed out Chinese FIT is quite unique because that it makes use of regional different pricing, and this different pricing means that the spread of means the distribution, so between the regional. As you know, in China, the reform in 2002 separated power generation and transmission and distributions, and make competition work for power producing, power generations. On the other hand, the two major power transmission and distribution companies remain in a state of oligopoly. So I think they seem to coordinate the electricity supply between the regional and using their monopoly power. I think so. This monopoly power, between there is a relationship between the price differences and this monopoly power of distribution companies. So, for example, a very famous policy in China, so Xi Tongson, this means policy that Western provinces will generate power using their abundant resources and transmit it to the Eastern provinces. Monopoly transmission and distribution companies passes so power from the Western power supplier in very cheaper prices, and sell this distribute to the Western Eastern provinces in the very higher prices. I think so. The power suppliers in Western provinces might forced to sell electricity at quite lower prices because transmission and distribution companies have a so strong monopoly power, expressive buyers. So I think so. It is might be necessary to rethink such a monopoly system in order to define FIT in terms of eliminating the regional disparity or the distributions between provinces. So I'd like to hear so Professor Sato's suggestions. My question is that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. First slide, please, about nuclear power. The issue of nuclear power is an important but difficult one. At least we can say that, first of all, the price of nuclear power is very expensive. And also, the nuclear power is not labor intensive. We need to be clear about why we would dare to use energy that is more expensive than solar and wind power. Second, and most importantly, nuclear power is not clean. It does not emit carbon dioxide directly, but it provides a lot of radioactive waste. There's also risk of accidents. When these costs are quantified, the reason for promoting nuclear power are not positive from an environmental standpoint. Third, their political issue. Nuclear power is closely linked to security issue. In order for a country with nuclear warhead to shut down its nuclear power plants, the global abolition of nuclear weapons is necessary. Next, please. and they set the price of electricity by the total cost method. They determine the price by taking into account the purchase price of electricity, transmission and distribution cost, and the amount of subsidies. But there is the investment of government. They produce financial resources from rich area and redistribute them among region to area rich in natural resources. This is the key to the spread of renewable energy. But oligopoly and monopoly also have a problem. For renewable energy, there is uniform national purchase price. However, China is shifting its system from FIT to RPS. It is the cost of coal-fired power generation. It become the benchmark price, which, as you point out, is high in the East and low in the West. The problem is not so much the monopoly as it is the benchmark price. The RPS only start this year and will gradually expand to include solar, wind, and offshore wind. We will need to watch carefully to see what the impact of that will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Then please, Wang Sensei.
Yes, thank you, Professor Sato-san. I'm sorry that I don't have the slide, but I have learned so much from your informative presentation. I think I have two simple questions. I think in terms of the China Green New Deal, there's no doubt that China has so much power and influence on Asia countries, especially this year. We have seen that after President Xi's announcement of carbon neutrality, we also see Japan and Korea's announcement very soon after that. So I must say that in the past 10 years, I really see that China has done a great job in terms of renewable energy, especially renewable energy already comprises 36.6% of China's total installed installation electricity power capacity, and 26.4% of the total power generation. So I'm really wondering from your observation, which policy scheme drives this success? We know that in the past years, China has launched a lot of regulations, especially like circular economy promotion, FIT, and also recently they have tried to launch this regulation of taxonomy. So there are so many policy schemes there. Which one do you think is most effective in reaching their carbon neutrality? And the second one is as to our research interest, because you have mentioned there is kind of a correlation on the investment and also the green job. And nowadays, we try to measure green job, but we don't know what is the exact definition of a green job. Is those jobs related to renewable energy or related to the waste management? Can you somehow teach us some of the concepts? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Very good question, but very difficult to answer question. First one, Chinese policy is a mixture. as you mentioned that renewable energy, pollution regulations, circular economy, a lot of area was there. But the most important is the economic plan, 5-year plan. 5-year plan has a lot of goals. And for example, I mentioned as a RPS. RPS will be the center of the future renewable energy development policy. But if the performance is poor, they will soon change their policy, because achieving the goals of the 5-year plan is the most important issue. And the second question, green job, and I showed some Chinese research, and they also face the difficulties to what is the green job, and they try to use the econometrics method and analyze the impact to total employment. So of course, I think renewable energy industry makes green jobs, and recycling industry also, and pollution protection industry also. And I think care or education or social service, it's really green. But the definition is very difficult, and existing reports are used to total employment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So then let's go to the final presentation, Japan's green policy by Mr. Iyoda. Are you ready? So please share, Iyoda-san, your screen.
Okay, let me share my screen.
And please start if you are ready.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masayoshi Iyoda. I work for Kiko Network, which is a civil society organization tackling with the climate crisis in Japan. And I am the maybe only speaker from the civil society organization, and I'm not I'm not a part of academia. So I would like to discuss the climate and energy policy in Japan from the civil society's perspective. But let me say firstly, unfortunately, so far, Japan doesn't have a Green New Deal policy. And also, I don't see there is a clear and strong and effective green recovery policy. So I would like to introduce the current situation regarding the climate and energy policy in Japan for the discussion later after this presentation. This is the list of the agenda item. And then firstly, as everyone, other speakers already discussed, we are facing the various type of crisis. I would like to share the symbolic event, which was the severe rain hit Kamogawa City in Chiba Prefecture, Japan, in April this year. At that time, the local government recommended local people to evacuate, but during the state of emergency declaration, so people had to choose go out from the home and go to the evacuation center, or stay home, worrying about the risk of the climate disaster. So this kind of dilemma is one of the symbolic situation we are facing. So this is also a reminder for us to recognize climate crisis as a threat multiplier. So I do believe that we need to deal with the various type of crisis at the same time. And then let me share the emission trends and the targets in Japan firstly. As you can see this in this slide, this shows the GHG emission trends and climate targets in Japan. The blue bar means the quantity of the emission in the past. Then you can see since the 2014, the Japanese government achieved to cut greenhouse gas emissions. And then at the previous speech this year, former Prime Minister Abe said, we achieved to cut GHG emissions by 11.8% from 2013 to 2018. This level of reduction is considered second to UK, United Kingdom among G7 countries. So he was proudly saying this kind of things as an outcome of the Japan's leading climate policy. But however, if you look at the base year, if it is compared to 1990, which was the base year of the Kyoto Protocol, it is only 2.5% reduction. And also, if we look at the UK, there might be a huge gap between Japan and UK. UK achieved to cut GHG emissions by 43.5% from 1990 to 2018. So we can see that there is a huge gap of the climate efforts between Japan and UK. Nevertheless, the Japanese government still insists that Japan achieved the huge amount of emission reduction. So in recent years, so I think it's a kind of embarrassing, but this is an attitude, and also this is a discourse that Japanese government to try to make. And also, the Japanese government has 3 types of climate target. First one is a 2020 target. This is at least 3.8% reduction from 2005 level. And this target was initially set at the COP19 in Warsaw, and then abandoning the previous climate target, which was a 25% reduction from 1990 level. That was set by the Democratic Party of Japan. And then this backsliding was criticized strongly by the civil society and also international community. So this is one of the symbolic event I personally have experienced. And then this was this clearly shows that Japan is not progressive around the climate issue. And secondly, we have, of course, a 2030 target, which is in place in nationally determined contributions, which was submitted to the UN. And the 2030 target is a 26% reduction from 2013 level. And then this was this is not in line with the Paris climate goal, which is 1.5 degrees Celsius, and also the Paris climate goal of well below of 2 Celsius degrees. So such kind of the lack of ambition has been hugely criticized in the international negotiations. And as you can see, this picture, was a scenery of the Fossil of the Day award ceremony at the COP. Fossil of the Day award is given by the civil society organizations to the country which is doing best for the worst. So this Fossil of the Day award is one of the symbol of the worst climate action. And then Japanese government have repeatedly received this dishonored award in the history of the international negotiation. And lastly, this is the very recent news, as you know. In October, the Prime Minister Suga declared that the net zero emissions, also known as carbon neutral target by 2050. Previously, the Japanese government set a 80% reduction from current level, but the Prime Minister Suga enhanced its ambition from 80 to the net zero emissions by 2050. And then, in my understanding, the international community welcomed this declaration, generally speaking. But I would like to point out that Prime Minister Suga does not enhance the 2020 target, and also he does not show his intention to increase the 2030 target. So which means like ambitious long-term target, but he has an insufficient near-term target. So it means like a very irresponsibility in terms of the intergenerational equity. So if we don't do enough action in a near term, which means like a future generation will have to do more, much more compared to the current generation. So this kind of intergenerational equity could be one of the core of the climate justice in Japan. Climate justice issue in Japan. And I'd like to share the political landscape on climate and energy issues in Japan, because this could be helpful for us to understand why there is no discussion, no official discussion regarding the Green New Deal within the Japanese government. At first, I'd like to share this fact and data. In Japan, about 85% of national greenhouse gas emission come from fossil fuel sector, fossil energy sector. So in Japan, the energy policy and climate policy are both sides of a coin. So we need to deal with climate policy and energy policy at the same time. In Japan, the basic energy plan is the fundamental policy framework of Japan's energy policy. And currently, the Japanese government has a fifth basic energy plan. It put nuclear and coal-fired thermal energy as its important baseload energy, important baseload electricity. And it describes renewable energy as a main power sources in the future at the first time. But in this basic energy plan, Japanese government prioritized the coal-fired power plants and also nuclear power plants rather than renewable energy sources. Background of this policy-making process is like lawmakers are hugely affected by the industry lobbying groups such as Taiwan Lin or Dengren. And also, I'd like to say that a window of opportunity to engage in decision-making process of basic energy plan was limited to civil society and other pro-renewable actors. So the members of the governmental committee to discuss about the basic energy plan, dominated by the representatives of the industry groups. So it's like polluters discuss about how to cut emissions. So this kind of issue, this kind of problem could be one of the core and one of the barrier for Japan to move forward in terms of the climate and energy policy. And within the government, there are two pillars of the climate and energy policy. As you know, there is a Ministry of Economy, Industry and Trade, METI, which is in charge of energy policy and strongly tied with industry groups, industry lobbying groups. And then they have richer resources, including the almost 5,000 staffs, and also they have a larger amount of budget compared to the Ministry of the Environment. Ministry of the Environment doesn't have a mandate to intervene the energy policy substantially. So Ministry of the Environment cannot make an influence the result or outcome of the basic energy plan in a substantial manner. As a result of such kind of problematic process of the policy discussion, the current basic energy plan illustrates that the 2030 energy mix, as you can see this slide. So it is clear that the Japanese government wants to continue to use coal-fired power plants, and also the Japanese government wants to continue to use nuclear power generation even after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And then experts argue that this target for nuclear power in 2030 could be very unrealistic because it is very difficult to achieve this goal, because there are a very limited number of the nuclear power plants in operation. And this kind of coal addictive and nuclear addictive energy policy was hugely influenced by the very limited area, very limited sectors in the Japanese economy. This is the graphics made by the Influence Map, which is the independent think tank based in UK. And then this illustrates that the very limited number of sectors, including iron and steel, automotive, oil and gas, coal, or electric power industry. This kind of sectors are trying to oppose the Paris-aligned climate policy. But these industries are equivalent to like less than 10% of Japan's GDP value add. And if you look at the progressive group of the climate policy, there are finance industry and healthcare or logistics or retailers. But there are a lot of progressive companies in terms of the climate policy, and total GDP are like 70%, more than 70%. But these kind of industry cannot make an influence compared to the iron, steel, or electric power company industries. So this kind of the bias between the carbon intensive industry and less carbon like a pro-renewable industry. So between two, there are conflict in the policy making process. But traditionally, so far, the polluting industry have been making strong influence in a Japanese climate policy process. And then the green recovery policy under the pandemic, I would like to explain the two policy measures. Firstly, I would like to mention the emergency economic measures. This was released in April 2020, this year. The Prime Minister Abe saying like the government will also promote the transition to a decarbonized society in that policy document. But there is no any concrete actions, or there is no mention how to promote such kind of measures towards a decarbonized society. So this was a very, very weak, or almost nothing about the green recovery policy. And then this is the graph made by Vivid Economics, evaluating the stimulus package and its environmental impact. This graph shows that a Japanese stimulus package has a net negative environmental impact. And yeah, I have to say that there are bad country too, other than Japan. But if you look at the European Union, France or Spain, they have a more progressive stimulus package in terms of the green recovery. And this is a very recent. 2 days ago, the Prime Minister Suga released the new package called Economic Stimulus Package. In this new policy document, Prime Minister Suga showed his intention to build a green society. And also carbon neutral is a new economic growth strategy. I think this kind of discourse is very new thing for the Japanese government, maybe. And then next point is a set of measures is added in this package, like supporting the promotion of the electric vehicles, or supporting for the renewable energy expansion, or things like that. But it seems to be just a collection of the conventional actions. So it is not a drastic shift from the conventional economy to the new economy, like a Green New Deal. And also, this policy highly depends on the innovation. Or I like to say that innovative technology development. So it is still unclear how to shift toward a green society. And also it is unclear that a green society means exactly. So I am very skeptical that Japan can build a green society or a green economy or whatever, because the government still allows electricity companies to build new coal-fired power plants right now. And also Japanese government clearly promotes nuclear policy, as the Park Sensei already mentioned. And also the Japanese government is introducing capacity market as a part of the electric power system reform, which functions as a subsidy for coal-fired power plants and nuclear power plants. And it leaves renewables at disadvantages in competition. So the demand is introducing the carbon tax or things like that. But in reality, Japanese government is still promoting or still supporting the coal-fired power plants and nuclear power plants through the electric power system. So I doubt, I am very negative and I am very pessimistic that the Japanese government will change its attitude towards climate and energy policy. So this is a recommendation or a policy recommendation from the civil society's perspective. And then this is described in my discussion paper. So if you are interested in this recommendation, please see please read the discussion paper. And lastly, I am a very pessimistic person, but the one hope or one possibility is the newly elected the Biden administration. As you know, the US, and it could impact on the Japanese climate and energy policy. So through these kind of pressures from other countries, maybe it could be some implications to the Japanese climate policy making process. So that is my hope so far, but unfortunately so far it is very hard to find the seed or signal of the Green New Deal or green recovery policy in Japan. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iyoda-san. Thank you. So let's start Q&A. The discussants, we have three discussants, Hirodaria, Amy-san, and Professor Hong and Dr. Lin. So please have your question, Hirodaria-san.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I learned a lot from it. Maybe my question strays far from what you have talked about, but please let me know how to combat problems with meat production. Agriculture, especially meat production, is responsible for a large amount of global greenhouse gas emissions, but has been excluded from climate policies. I have a question about the increase in meat substitutes, such as plant-based meat or cell-based meat, as a part of the Green New Deal. I'd like to ask your view on whether we should support and invest in the current meat industry's shift to substitutes production, or should we be looking to launch into new substitutes industries? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Iyoda-san.
Thank you for your interesting question. I'm sorry, but I am not a specialist of the food and meat production or the literacy sector, but I think that maybe we need to take action as strong as we can. So my sense is that if it is needed, we have to do both. But and also we need to consider that the need for Japanese government to invest to the meat substitute, like maybe beyond the meat or things like that, maybe. And also we need to consider to introduce the like a tax or methane tax or things like that to reduce the consumption of the meat. And also I was looking to the economic stimulus packages released 2 days ago, as I mentioned in my presentation. It says like the Japanese government will try to support for meat export as one of the very good commodity, very good production made in Japan. And also there was no mention about decrease demands of the meat or meat production or thing like that. So in my understanding, within the Japanese government, there is not discussion at this stage, and I have heard that there was a conflict between Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of the Agriculture. That was like Ministry of the Environment wanted to introduce the vegan activity in their policy document, but the Ministry of the Agriculture strongly opposed that kind of inclusion of in the policy document, because it could lead misunderstanding that the meat consumption should be decreased or things like that. Maybe such kind of a discussion is happening in the Ministry of the Agriculture, backed by the meat industry. But also Ministry of the Environment wants to raise awareness on the problem of the meat consumption. So maybe in the current situation, it is very difficult to put this issue on the table within the government.
Okay, thank you,
you.
Yoda-san.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if there is a specialist on that issue in your colleagues, please introduce her.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then, Professor Hong, please.
Hey, Mr. Iyoda, you sound rather critical of your government's electricity power generation mix, especially your government, according to your presentation, still emphasizes nuclear and coal, while not much emphasis or preference on the renewable energy sources. But official statistic from IEA, the International Energy Agency, shows that Japan, the renewable energy proportion among electricity generation is close to 20%, including hydro. So as I said, Korea, it's still around 5%. So what do you think? You're still thirsty that your country has long ways to go, or because you're from civil society, you rather see your government's action as insufficient and critical?
Yes, I'm thirsty, still thirsty. And I would like to urge the Japanese government to take strong measures to expand renewable energy, because this is the both sides of a coin, maybe. But if we allow the Japanese government and electricity companies to build new coal-fired power plants this year, or if we allow the electricity company to restart or replace or build a new nuclear power plant, maybe adverse effects will be locked in for like some decades, like 30 years or 40 years. And then it will cross the 2050 timing. So I think now is the very important to urge the Japanese government to shift the direction. And also we need to evaluate the recent progress of the renewable energy expansion, but also we need to still emphasize that need to shift from the coal or nuclear to renewable energy. And also we need to strengthen the energy efficiency measures, which could be very important to achieve the 100% renewable society. So as a civil society perspective, from the civil society perspective, we are we continue to ask the government to do more.
Are there any new nuclear or coal power plants under construction at this moment? No.
Sorry?
Are there any new nuclear power plants or coal power plants under construction at this moment in your country?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes? Oh, there is, yes. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
there are some large-scale coal-fired power plants are being built at this moment right now. And then I can see there are some law cases against such kind of construction of the coal-fired power plants.
How many? Sorry to ask many questions. How many coal power plants under construction at this moment?
At this moment, maybe I have to check it. But after 2012, after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, we can see that there are 50 plans to build new coal-fired power plants.
Really? 50?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
And then
are they large scale coal power plant?
Some are large scaled plant and some are small scaled plants. And also some are already canceled. Some are already constructed and started operation.
Oh, okay. I see.
And maybe
okay, thank you.
Yeah, 10 or 20 are still.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's check later.
Yeah.
Yeah, very important information. And finally, Dr. Lin, please, your question.
Thank you so much, Iyoda-san. And I have two very simple questions, and I will go very quick. And you talk about government a lot, and I also wonder, what do you see the collaboration between governmental agencies like BT and MOE in Japan? And I think that's always an issue to us, how the government can play a better role. But the integration of them between the agencies is very critical, and I don't see very good integration here in Taiwan. So I would like to hear what's the ideal situation for you in Japan. And the second question is about the civil society. And it's quite interesting to me because here in Taiwan, civil society's perspectives are always very important, but not so acceptable to the government. I think because the role of civil society. And I just wonder how you like to see a civil society can make a better impact, okay, or more influential suggestion to the government, and by which way, by what kind of approaches. And do you think international collaboration will be a good way, or what kind of, any kind of approach you would like to see? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Maybe this could be our answers for both questions, maybe, but maybe one of the way to make an influence is that mobilizing people. As you can see that there are so many young people or kids go to the street and then speaking up the climate crisis. This kind of movement was started by the Greta Thunberg. And also now all over the world, there are so many young people are marching. And I know that there are very active, there are activists trying to speak up on climate in Taiwan. And I have a friend in Taiwan of the civil society organizations. So maybe one of the way is mobilizing the people could be very important. And also it's very important to have attract the media attention and then getting the media coverage. And then that could be one of the useful way for the governmental official or lawmakers can be aware of the climate issues as an urgent manner. But actually, the Japan is not a leader in that sense. So I don't know this is a good answer or yeah, good informative things. But I think yeah, I think I should continue to fight against that kind of old-fashioned way of thinking through that activity. And also, if you look at the past, like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the renewable energy renewable energy were not so powerful compared to the current situation. But we see that there are very large progress made for 10 years. So maybe we need to focusing on the such kind of positive change, especially for the brain, especially for the pressures made by the other countries, other progressive countries like EU or ELSIS, small island developing countries. So maybe we need to learn from them a lot. And then I want to reflect them to our activity. So maybe we need to set up the other meetings to discuss this. But yeah, I hope this.
Okay.
Your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, then that is the end of all presentations. Yeah, let's continue similar things in the future. Thank you all speakers and participants. Yeah, let's continue the research on Green New Deal and mobilizing civil society. Yeah, in collaboration with us, East Asian associates. Now, Professor SooCheol, you have an announcement.
Thank you very much, Professor Park, give me a little time. So I'd like to inform all the participants of another web seminar on the 2050 net zero of Japan and China and Korea. It's closely related to the topic of this seminar. So, and the seminar will be held late afternoon of 21st in this month. And I already informed this seminar by the ship's mailing list. So I think some of this, some of the participants already know about this seminar. So if anyone who have interest in the seminar, please send email. The language of the seminar is basically Japanese. So my email address is all the small letter SLEE @ and major MEIJO -U.AC.jp. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then we now know how important to take a photo together on Zoom webinar. So let's take a photo together with your print screen button. So please, let's smile to your camera. All right? And I take 5 or 10 pictures. All right? Okay, thank you very much. Then we would like to have a concluding address from Mr. Clemens Kuntze. Are you ready? Please, Clemens. Off the mute.
Yeah. Apologies. Thank you very much. These were 4 wonderful presentations, all very sharp, very frank, and partly very critical, very much appreciated. So thank you very much, Professor Hong, Professor Lin, Professor Sato, and Iyoda-san. Thank you also very much to all discussants. Excellent question. And also in the chat, there were some really interesting questions and answers going on. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much, Uiko-san and Professor Park, for organizing this. Really excellent organization, bringing us all together and doing all this in such a timely manner and really very great. I learned a lot from all of your presentations, and what strikes me the most is that despite these three huge pledges from China, Korea, and Japan, it seems like the actual policy responses don't really follow yet the narrative. So I think it is now on us to actually continue this discussion and keep on pushing for more green policies and for real green deals. So I hope we can all stay in touch, and I hope that we can also support your work on this in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You are welcome. And yeah, please say, I would like personally to say thank you to the organizer, Ms. Uiko Hasegawa. So please, Uiko Hasegawa, give your final remark.
Okay, thank you very much, and Clemenza and all friends of Heinrich Bell Foundation for your support. And of course, all presenters and discussants, thank you very much for great presentation and questions. I learned a lot of this webinar. Thank you so much. And of course, audience, thank you for your long hours of participation. Thank you very much. After the webinar, a summary of the presentation and questions will be posted on the website, our website, in both English and Japanese. Please check it out. Our Green New Deal Policy Research Group will continue communicate about sustainable economies and policies. So see you all at the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So this is the end of all today's program. Thank you. Thank you. So please leave this session. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hasegawa-san.
Thank you very much, Green Sensei, Hon Sensei, Clemens-san. See you.
See you.
Wen Sensei, thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's keep in touch.
Yeah.
Let's keep in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.